Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial, and right now we're going to get to the actual hacking. So what we did in the few previous videos is we defined what Linux is. We also saw how we can actually use some of the basic Linux commands. We got to know the Linux environment, and we also set up our virtual environment that we are going to update later on with some different virtual machines that we are going to attack. But for now on, before we actually do any of that, we're going to define what actual hacking is, what are the phases of a penetration test, and in which order are we going to learn them. First of all, and the first phase would be the footprinting and reconnaissance, and basically what footprinting means is, first of all, by default, there are 5 steps in a penetration test, and each one of them is important, but the footprinting is the most important one because it is basically gathering preliminary data or intelligence about your target. So you're gathering as much information you can about your host machine that you're going to attack, and basically it can be performed actively, meaning that we have direct contact with our target, or it can be performed passively, meaning that we don't have direct contact with the target. Now, what does that mean is basically active contact means that we actually send some packets to the target, while the passive contact means that we do not have any interaction with the infrastructure, and therefore we do not send any type of packets to the target machine. Okay? So, in my opinion, as I said, the reconnaissance and footprinting is the most important step of a penetration test, because it's in this phase that the data is gathered in order to plan out the entire attack. So if you gather, for example, some false data, everything further on will be false, and therefore you will not be able to execute your attack because it was based on the false gathered data. Okay? So the tools basically that hackers use for this phase or for the footprinting phase are something like OSINT framework, Maltego, Google search. Basically, search engines are really good to perform passive information gathering. There are lots of stuff you can find on the Google or on any search engine, basically something like mobile phones, email addresses, any type of useful information that you can use later on in your attack. But there are also some different tools, such as the Harvester, that is basically going to perform the email gathering for you. So you just simply run the Harvester on a specific website, and it is going to search through different search engines and try to find every email that will belong to that domain. And later on, once you gather the information, you can simply just use something like Shodan or Nessus in order to perform the vulnerability test and in order to see whether some machines are vulnerable or not. Okay, so that would be a little bit about the first phase. The second phase, which is similar to the first phase, is scanning and enumeration. Now, after reconnaissance comes scanning. Scanning is a phase where we actually gather furthermore details about our target, as well as discovering whether our target is vulnerable to some attack. Now, we can discover that by simply using different scanners, which one of the most famous ones is Nmap, and it is also a scanner that we are going to cover in great detail because it is really important to actually know Nmap really well in order to perform scanning really well. It provides us with different options to perform our scans, from basically changing the size of our packets to bypass IDS and firewall, to sending different types of packets from a spoofed IP address. Now, there are also different options you can take, such as, for example, only sending the SYN types of packets, only sending the ACK types of packets, which is just a part of a TCP connection. You can perform the full connection, you can perform the connection or connectionless scan using UDP packets, so that is also something you can do. But we're going to cover all of that in the Nmap section. For now on, we're just talking about different phases of penetration test. The third phase, which is the actual phase where we gain access, is called the exploitation phase. Now, it is simply just gaining access, because gaining access basically requires taking control of one or more devices in order to either extract data from the target or to use that device to then launch attacks on other targets. Okay, so different tools can be used for this, or different tools can be used for different targets, should I say. For example, Gaining access to a wireless network can be performed using AirCrack tool, which are we also going to cover. It is used in order to actually brute force the hash of a password and get access to that network. But for example, gaining access to an outdated Windows 7 machine can be done with Metasploit framework tool using Eternal Blue NSA exploit. So the fourth phase would be maintaining access or creating a persistence. Okay, so this step comes after the exploit. Once we want to create the persistence on our target for future purpose, the attacker basically must remain stealthy in this phase so as to not get caught while using the target environment. Metasploit framework can also be used to perform this step, so you can use the persistence module that comes in the Meterpreter shell in order to create persistence on target machine. Now, if we use our own tools, for example, and our own reverse shells, whether they are coding in C, Python, on any other programming language, we can implement in our backdoor part of code that is going to, for example, in Windows environment, create a registry key, which will allow our program to run on startup every time the target actually restarts their machine. So we're going to have reverse shell every time that the target actually turns on their PC. And the last fifth step would be covering our tracks. This final phase of covering tracks simply means that the attacker must take the steps necessary to remove all semblance of detection. Any changes that were made, the authorizations that were escalated, and so on, they all must return to a state of non-recognition by the host's network's administrator. So once you actually finish your entire penetration test, you exploit the target, you create persistence, and once you finish everything and gather what you wanted to gather, then you must cover all of your tracks so it looks like you were never there. Okay, so that is also one of the important parts. That would basically be about it. Those are the 5 phases of a penetration test, and we're going to start with the footprinting and reconnaissance, or basically we're going to start with information gathering in the next video. So, hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I will see you in the next one. Bye!